Thank you very much. Am I audible? Yes, excellent. Technology. So, I'd like to talk to you about thriving in the digital age. And that begs a question. When I say digital age, what do I mean? To me, one of the most amazing facts about the relatively short time I've been alive, I am just about a child of the 80s, is the way a lot of very big numbers have kind of stolen up in everyday life, a kind of scale that we weren't used to living with even half a century ago. By the end of this year, there'll be over 1 billion people on Facebook. During the last couple of decades, we've seen more than 2 billion people go online and more than 5 billion mobile phone accounts start up around the world. And that means to me that we do live in a digital age, in the sense that it's now the normal case for a member of humanity, of the 7 billion odd people on the planet, to be connected in some form to everybody else. And I'm sort of in awe of these numbers and slightly alarmed by them, because they don't touch on something else, which is rather more important in many ways. And that's the one quantity of which all the technology in the world can't conjure a single particle more. And that's time. And in some ways, the story of technology is of how machines have thrown away old limits. They used to be terribly expensive. Even I remember when a computer was so expensive that I couldn't buy one. And they used to be very slow, and they used to be very stupid. They used to be like kind of, dumb creatures that followed us around and made little noises. And now, the limits are with us. The limits, increasingly, are about the time and the attention we have to spare, not the machines. The machines are huge, or infinite, or seamless. And this suggests to me that we have to think very differently about our time in a digital age if we are to apportion it wisely, if we're to thrive, in the word I've used, rather than just be. I suppose there's a nice quote from the philosopher of technology, Paul Virilio, who says, time is not something that can be measured with a pendulum. Time is something we build together within a tribe, a family, a region. And what this says to me is that, all time is not created equal. It's about the qualities and the kinds of time we have in our lives. And it also says to me that if we're not very careful, the amazing power, potential, and the gift of technology and connection risk helping us spend our time in ways that are not actually as good for us as they might be. And we never get that time back. There's a cheerful thought there. So these are figures taken from surveys in America of 8 to 18-year-olds and how they use media. And you'll notice, in 1999, 6 hours, 21 minutes of media consumption a day. And they did the survey. This is done by the Kaiser Family Foundation, who do very good reports on this kind of thing. And when they did this report, this number had been constant for quite a while. And they said, well, they're using media. We don't really see how they're going to fit any more media in each day. Time is full up, watching telly at home, computers, listening to music. But what happened when they did the survey again a decade later in 2009 was that this total had gone up to 7 hours and 38 minutes of media consumption every day. And when you take multitasking into account, that goes up to 10 hours and 45 minutes of media exposure every day. Now, what had happened in that decade is mobile technology, is smartphones, is iPods. There's all that lovely stuff that I've switched off, but that I don't normally switch off. And it means that people suddenly, instead of using media being something they did at home when they just popped the telly on, it became something they did everywhere they were, that penetrated not just time set aside, but time in general. And the tipping point I'm talking about is that more than 50% of people's waking hours are spent plugged into the end of a live wire of some kind, spent consuming media. And for me, this is an interesting tipping point because it means, as the rest of us gradually sort of follow in the footsteps of these figures, that people's normal state had shifted and had gone, our normal state used to be not using media, right? It's fairly obvious. But now, the normal state for more and more people is becoming being available on media, using it, being plugged in. This is a sign of our times in more ways than one. Standard class quiet carriage. You'll be lucky to find a quiet carriage which is actually a quiet carriage. But it's the state that has to be specially requested. And unless we specially request it, we don't get it, ever. Now this is what really interests me. Because what that says to me is not that technology is evil when it's got fangs and it's going to take over your brain. I think a lot of people are sort of starting to say, ooh, I'm going to throw away my phone down the toilet and go and live on a hill. A nice thought, maybe, but not very practical, not very useful. And to me, the point is that technology is great for some things, but it's not great for everything. And unless we start to think actively about building time away from technology into our lives, our default is creeping towards something we haven't necessarily chosen. It's creeping towards everything being available on live wires, consuming media plugged in. And that, I think, is not good for us. I'm very sorry to say this is photoshopped. I'm so sorry. I followed her around for days, but this embodies a symbolic truth as well as really quite amusing me. And the truth it embodies for me is our relationship with technology. Because computers, you don't have to go back very long to find that computers were big, big, scary things. And personal computing, when it came along, was a revolutionary idea. A computer in every home, that computing was just for people at home. That was not what you thought in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. Computer was for very clever people in military institutions. But now, I think we're moving from personal computing towards what you might call intimate computing. Sounds a bit naughty. I don't mean it that way. I mean our relations have gone beyond personal to treating computers more like extensions of our bodies and minds than like separate tools. The first thing most people touch when they wake up in the morning, the last thing they touch when they go to bed at night. This isn't naughty. It's their phone. It is a phone. You set the alarm, you turn the alarm off. It's my phone anyway. And so what this suggests to me is something put very nicely by the writer and activist Cory Doctorow, who says, someone who accepts every technology is not being especially technophilic, because this doesn't require reflection or choice. It's like saying, I'm a gourmet, I'll eat anything. To be a gourmet of technology is to make choices about what you're going to use and how you're going to use it. And so I want to give you 3 quick ideas about what it means to use technology as a gourmet, to savor it, to love it, rather than just to let it be your unthinking default. And the first question to ask yourself is, what works best plugged and unplugged? 2 different kinds of time in your life, 2 different resources, 2 different equally valuable ways of thinking and acting and relating. And we need both. We deserve both. Here's an extreme example. You may recognize some of these people. I didn't take this one. This is some of the most powerful people in the world during the operation to assassinate one of the most famous people in the world, a certain Mr. bin Laden, who's no longer with us. And the interesting thing about this for me is that it embodies something that the military are very aware of, which is when to use and when not to use technology. So, in the Situation Room, they were receiving a live feed from drones, from soldiers. Technology of, the highest tech you can imagine was being used. But the crucial decision was also taken that all the key people involved in decision-making should be in the same room together, watching the same live feeds. And this was very, very important. During the operation, one of the helicopters developed an error and went down during their stealthy assault mission. And the president had to make a split-second decision whether to abort or to continue. And he made the decision to continue. And part of the reason he was able to make a decision like that on the spot with full confidence was, if you like, the human bandwidth gathered in the room. If they'd been all on Skype, or military equivalent, that decision could not have happened in the same way. Now, this is an extreme example, but for me, it's about recognizing that technology is not the same as being unplugged with people. Interaction remotely is not the same as interaction in person. Resources are to be used appropriately, and if we don't use them, we find ourselves making worse quality decisions and spending our time less well. Getting away from terrorists and kind of, getting back to something closer to my experience, the question, what works best for me, I think is a very valuable question to ask, because there's no magical recipe. This is my imaginary plane. This is my mind plane. Because I discovered, I do a lot of reading, I have to do a lot of that kind of stuff for my work, and I discovered I was doing really good quality work while I was on flights, because I couldn't get interrupted by people. And I was slightly depressed to discover this. I wish that I had a super strong brain, and I could just think myself into states of astonishing productivity anywhere and everywhere. But I can't. None of us can. We are the victims of our circumstances. I'm a different person when I know that that phone in my pocket could go off and tell me that the thing I last wrote was rubbish and I have to rewrite it, or whatever. And that's simply a fact. And so I simply pop aeroplane mode on my phone for an hour or so a day, go into my little mind plane, and I behave differently because I know I can't be contacted, because I'm in a different kind of time. I have a different kind and quality of time in my life built in by that. This is a photograph of some of my work on the book. I did a lot of it using the internet. The internet is a staggering resource to anyone who cares about ideas and words. But I also found that by writing some stuff down on paper, very radical, I know, I had a different relationship with those words. I took possession of them differently. I felt they were mine. I felt they belonged to me. When I'm reading stuff online, I always, it takes me 1 second to find that somebody else has already said it better 100 years ago, which is depressing. So that's very important for me. And the final question, what does technology want me to do? Which I know is a curious question to ask. But the thing about this is that technology is a system. And it is not just a neutral tool. There's no such thing as a neutral tool. Technology has tendencies encoded in it. Take email. I have a little theory that email is evil. Because what email wants you to do is send more email. Wherever you are, whoever you're with, it wants you to be available, send more email, reply, copy everybody in, send an attachment via email. Quick email to check, email to say hi, email to say bye, email. Email wants you to do nothing but send email for the rest of your life. Which is fine, which is cool, but it's not necessarily what you want to do. And email is innocent compared to Facebook. I mean, email's just like a bystander, whereas Facebook is designed like that. Much cleverer people than me are paid a lot of money to try and make you do things when you're using Facebook, like to poke people. You don't want to poke them, it just makes you poke them. I use the word evil. I don't really mean they're evil. What I mean is that they want things for you that may not be what you want. And if you don't learn to ask, if you don't realize these are systems, then you can't choose them and use them. You're used by them. You end up in this situation. 3 words that embody present times. Whenever you hear that or feel that or see that, that is because someone is telling you that what the machine wants is more important than what you want. To which the only rational answer is no. But unless we ask the question, we can't say no. Unless we realize that something is not just a default, we can't choose better. So these are 3 things which in a way are the same thing. Knowing when to plug in and unplug, discovering what works for you, asking what technology wants. For me, it's all about seeing the system, choosing, having different kinds and qualities of time in your life, and being able to do that most important thing of all, which is spend your time the way you want to spend it, with technology helping you to do that, rather than have it spent for you and then find it's all gone. Thank you very much.